In the grand hall of the castle, a sanctuary steeped in the echoes of ancient secrets and the subtle dance of courtly intrigue, gathered a distinguished group of nobles. The atmosphere, though outwardly draped in casual elegance, was a chessboard of unspoken machinations, where power and ambition moved like shadowed pawns. The hall, a testament to Elisaria's storied past, was adorned with tapestries that whispered tales of valor and betrayal. Its walls, lined with the portraits of long-dead monarchs, seemed to observe the proceedings with a silent, knowing gaze. The air was thick with the scent of old wine and the undercurrents of whispered alliances, each conversation a veiled jewel of wits and influence. Into this arena of veiled intentions, Princess Astrid, a figure both revered and enigmatic, made her entrance. She was a vision of regal poise, her presence commanding the room like a ship cutting through still waters. In her hands she bore a bottle of wine, its age as venerable as the legends that shrouded her kingdom.
Forgive my tardiness, and let me offer this vintage, a rare gem from our southern vineyards. It is my humble offering for keeping such esteemed company waiting.
As the nobles turned their gaze towards her, Princess Astrid's smile illuminated the dimly lit hall. She moved with the grace of a seasoned diplomat, seating herself with an elegance that spoke of her noble heritage and the weight of the crown she was destined to wear. Laura, who was seated beside the princess, leaned in, her eyes glinting with the thrill of secrets yet to be unveiled.
Do tell, Princess. Have you heard the whispers that flutter like shadowed birds through the corridor this evening?
Laura's voice was a conspiratorial murmur, as if she was sharing a secret with the moon itself. Astrid's eyes, sharp as a falcon's and just as discerning, shimmered with intrigue.
No, but do share. These whispers have yet to grace my ears.
The nobles around the table leaned in closer, their eyes gleaming with anticipation, hungry for the tantalizing whispers of scandal and intrigue. Each of them, a player in the grand game, understood the power of information, the currency of the realm more valuable than gold. Laura's voice dropped to a hushed, almost reverent tone, as if the very spirits of the hall might be eavesdropping on their conversations.
On my journey to this grand assembly, a rumor as swift and elusive as a shadow reached my ears. It is said that someone, a figure shrouded in mystery and cloaked in the night, claims to know the true identity of Prince Henry's enigmatic secret correspondent. I had held back amongst the assembled group, but now my expression darkened at this revelation. A tempest of thoughts swirling in my mind like a storm over a restless sea. To remain hidden was my choice, a strategic veil of secrecy I had carefully woven around myself, a cloak of shadows in which I had wrapped my intentions. But for another to assume my identity, to masquerade as the author of my words, was a perilous gambit. A move that could unravel the delicate tapestry of alliances and secrets I had so meticulously crafted. The hall, with its ancient stones and watchful portraits, seemed to lean in, eager to witness the unfolding drama. Every word was a move, every glance a strategy. The revelation of a secret could shift the balance of power, turning pawns into queens and kings into exiles. As the conversation continued, weaving a web of speculation and intrigue, I realized the gravity of the situation. The identity of Prince Henry's correspondent was not just a matter of idle gossip. It was a key that could unlock doors best left closed, flame that could ignite a conflagration across the political landscape. The revelation of this secret could be the spark that set the kingdom ablaze.
In one of the grand chambers of the palace, Prince Henry and his most trusted confidant, Haxon, kept their voices low, their conversation secret. The room, adorned with tapestries depicting battles and conquests of old, and lit by the flickering light of torches, provided a fitting backdrop for their clandestine discussion. "Why do you let this charade persist, Your Highness?" Haxon's voice, laced with a mix of concern and frustration, echoed slightly in the vast chamber. "And how, pray tell, have you discerned this truth? How can you be so sure that that maid isn't my secret confidant?" "After all these years, do you think I cannot read expressions? Your face is a canvas of sorrow, Your Highness. It is clear that the woman who came to visit you is not the one." Prince Henry's response was a nonchalant shrug, his demeanor as calm as a still lake. Yet beneath the surface, Haxon knew, currents of emotion swirled in tumultuous patterns. Haxon pressed on, his patience wearing thin. "The rumors speak of a prince entangled in a romantic escapade with a palace maid, sire. Such rumors will engulf the capital in mere days, and likely spell ruin for all those involved." "Let the capital talk. I shall find solace in their stories, if nowhere else." Haxon sighed, his forehead creased with worry. The prince's indifference to the swirling rumors was dangerous, one that could shift the balance of power in unforeseen ways. And their kingdom, the Celestial Isles, was already in a precarious position. "The common people will see you as a romantic, a prince lost in love. But the nobles, sire, they will see this as weakness, as an opportunity to exploit. Our lands can't withstand much more. You know this." Prince Henry's eyes, a shade of deep violet that mirrored the evening sky, flickered with a hint of amusement. "Let them see what they wish. The truth is often less interesting than the tales woven by idle tongues." "But, Your Highness, our kingdom—" "I'm well aware, Haxon. I know of the threat to the Celestial Isles more than anyone. You know of my intentions on this visit." Haxon leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. "But, Your Highness, the maid, she is but a pawn in this game. What of her fate when the truth is revealed?" "She will be protected. I am not so heartless as to leave her to the wolves." Haxon nodded, though his concerns remained. He knew the prince's mind was a labyrinth, one that he, even as his closest confidant, could not fully navigate. Henry's strategies were as complex as the tapestries on the walls, each thread a part of a larger, unseen picture. The two men looked up, noticing a festive rabble coming down the hall towards them. Not interested in getting caught up in the revelries, Henry pushed away from the stone wall against which he stood, indicating for Haxon to follow. Haxon followed closely, his loyalty unwavering despite the storm of uncertainties that lay ahead, and lowered his voice. "Your Highness, have you, perhaps, been ensnared by this maid? By love? By lust?" Henry shot the knight a withering stare. "I'm not going to grace that question with an answer." "Why then do you let this masquerade continue? The court whispers, Your Highness, and their whispers are turning to roars. I must understand your intentions to brace for the consequences." Haxon struggled to hide his frustrations. Time and again it had fallen upon him to navigate the aftermath of the prince's whims, whether they led to triumph or turmoil. But he kept his silence. After a moment, the prince finally broke his silence and spoke. His voice was soft, almost lost in the grandeur of the chamber. "I am crafting a dream, Haxon." "A dream of love?" Haxon's brow furrowed in a mix of skepticism and curiosity, perhaps with a dash of hope, clinging to the ideal of good he knew lay within the prince. Not as you perceive it. It is a dream of happiness, yes, but the awakening from such a dream is a demise most hollow, a futile death.
But why, Your Highness? Why weave such a dream only to tear it asunder?
The prince's smile then twisted into something more cunning. I have issued a clear warning to the maid. Should she continue her charade, she will face my unbridled fury.
So, you plan to elevate her hopes only to dash them mercilessly?
Not for no reason, Haxon. You know of our mission here. Haxon clicked his tongue in disapproval, his loyalty to the prince wrestling with his sense of justice.
Would it not be simpler, more direct, to punish her for this deceit against the crown and continue on in our quest?
The prince shook his head. Such an action would mar my reputation. Why shatter the very useful image of a whimsical, philandering prince over a simple liar? Resigned, Haxon exhaled a heavy sigh.
As you command, Your Highness. But when will you confront the true author of those letters? You are aware of their identity.
I am, but I fear that direct confrontation would lead to denial, and revealing my true self is not an option.
Of course, sire. Your secret is safe with me.
Don't look so concerned, Haxon. The game is afoot. You are simply more accustomed to battles on the field, while I am accustomed to battles in royal courts. We will achieve our aim. We have no other choice. Haxon nodded, his mind awash with thoughts. The prince, it seemed, was playing a hand that only he could see. The consequences, however, would ripple, and Haxon could only hope that when the final piece was played, the kingdom would still stand. The winter solstice celebrations at Elisaria's royal court were always a spectacle of grandeur and joy, a time when the palace brimmed with nobles and diplomats from across the lands. Yet, by tradition, the third day of the festivities witnessed a lull in the banquet hall, as guests typically sought the pleasures of the city or the company of newfound friends. This had been the customary rhythm for years, a predictable ebb and flow of attendance that one could almost set their clock by. But this year, the third day dawned differently. The great hall, usually echoing with the quietude of thin crowds, was abuzz with an unexpected surge of attendees. Countess Eliza, with her sharp eyes and sharper tongue, leaned in toward Bronwyn, a note of surprise in her voice.
Your Majesty, the hall is unusually crowded today.
Bronwyn glanced around, her expression one of cool detachment.
Indeed, it appears so, Countess.
Countess Eliza clicked her tongue, a glint of mischief in her eyes.
Rumours have a way of filling rooms. It seems the whispers about Prince Henry and the maid have piqued the court's curiosity.
Bronwyn's response was measured, betraying neither interest nor disdain. The rumour, though potentially scandalous, was a trifling matter to her. Yet, as she observed the hall, her gaze fell upon the concubine. Surrounded by a coterie of nobles, Rosa's eyes darted nervously, often resting on the Duchess of Betha. A question formed in Bronwyn's mind, unspoken but clear.
What connection lies between them?
The sudden creak of the grand doors drew Bronwyn's attention. Expecting Aldrich, she was instead met with the sight of Prince Henry, his arm linked with that of Cheryl, Rosa's maid. The pair's entrance was like a stone cast into a still pond, rippling shock and whispers throughout the hall. Countess Eliza, hardly able to contain her astonishment, murmured under her breath,
"By the gods, he's brought her to the banquet!"
Cheryl, transformed from her usual modest servant's attire, was resplendent in a gown of pale pink, its fabric shimmering under the chandeliers. The dress, undeniably costly, clung to her in a manner that suggested both taste and wealth. Countess Eliza couldn't hold her tongue.
"That dress, it's far from a maid's wages."
It wasn't just Eliza who had begun whispering, so too did the nearer nobles. "It must be a gift from Prince Henry."
They do share a certain compatibility. Perhaps it's the bond of secret love that unites them.
The surrounding guests nodded in agreement, their eyes fixed on the unlikely pair, alive with murmurs and speculation, but to Bronwyn, the room suddenly felt smaller as Prince Henry's gaze found her, sending a shiver across her skin. It took all of her self-control to return his look with only a polite nod, maintaining the decorum expected of her station. However, upon seeing this cool greeting, Prince Henry's expression shifted, his features contorting into a frown before he abruptly shook his head and turned away. Bronwyn fought a sudden pang in her chest and quickly turned her attention to the drink in her hand. As Prince Henry and Cheryl moved through the crowd, their presence continued to cause a stir. Bronwyn, maintaining her poise, couldn't help but feel a twinge of worry. The dynamics of the court were shifting, like shadows cast by flickering candlelight, and in these changes lay both intrigue and potential peril. For now, she chose to stay quiet and observe, her mind as sharp as the blade of Sir Artemis's sword. The grand hall of Elisaria's palace shifted subtly into a theatre of hushed whispers and unspoken questions. Bronwyn couldn't help but feel a sense of unease, though her thoughts were interrupted as Aldrich made his entrance, his gaze sweeping the room before settling on Rose. In that moment, a palpable tension filled the air. Choosing to distance herself from the unfolding drama, Bronwyn turned aside, her hand absent-mindedly accepting a fresh glass of wine from a passing servant. Settling herself on a settee by the wall, she engaged in light conversation with the guests. Her mind, however, remained partially adrift in the undercurrents of court intrigue. The evening's gentle rhythm was abruptly shattered by a commotion that erupted from the center of the room. Bronwyn's gaze lifted to witness a scene that painted a starkly different picture from the early festive atmosphere. Prince Henry, a visage of sorrow and betrayal, stood opposite Cheryl, whose face was marred by tears and the crimson flush of humiliation. Drawing closer, Bronwyn overheard Prince Henry's anguished accusation. "But why did you deceive me? I sought someone of true importance, of deepest affection." The desperation in his voice echoed through the hall, revealing a personal betrayal that went deeper than mere court scandal. The maid, overwhelmed and cornered, struggled to form words, her face a canvas of guilt and fear. Prince Henry, his patience waning, continued. "Is this the way of the Elisaria? To deceive those of royal blood? Such deceit is unforgivable, regardless of one's station." Bronwyn could sense the shifting mood of the onlookers. Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the crowd, and one noble, barely audible, muttered a scathing rebuke. "She brings disgrace upon her country." Bronwyn quietly turned to the nearest noblewoman.
"What has transpired here?" "It's unclear, Your Majesty. They appeared to be in a cordial conversation, but it seems Prince Henry was probing for truth."
The noblewoman paused, contemplating her next words.
"The prince's questions must have unveiled a falsehood."
Bronwyn, taking in the scene, realized the gravity of the moment.
This was no mere palace intrigue. It was a matter of honor and truth, a collision of personal desires and royal duties. She understood that while the truth behind the maid's deception was crucial, it was the reactions of those involved, particularly Prince Henry and Rose, that would reveal the true depths of the court's secrets. In the intricate dance of courtly politics, every step, every misstep, bore significance. As Bronwyn stood amidst the unfolding drama, she knew that her own response, too, would be scrutinized, a testament to her wisdom and authority as the Queen of Elisaria. The confrontation between Prince Henry and the maid unfolded like a dramatic play. His voice, though low, resonated with a clarity that captured the attention of all present, including Bronwyn. But the maid faltered under his scrutiny.
But sire, I did write those letters. I swear it. I thought you loved me.
As Cheryl stammered, Bronwyn's gaze shifted to Rose. This was her maid, after all. And, of course, there was the Viscountess Verdi standing just behind the concubine, just as she had stood behind Bronwyn when she had read those letters in the gardens. Bronwyn tried not to visibly clench her fists. With the crowd's full attention on them now, Prince Henry pressed further. You were not the one who corresponded with me. But you know who did, don't you? You're the intermediary.
I.
And whom do you serve? Isn't your master the one I've been seeking? Bronwyn felt a sense of disbelief wash over her. The situation was spiraling into a labyrinth of misunderstandings and half-truths. Despite Prince Henry's confident assertions, his eyes betrayed a coldness that spoke of deeper emotions. Was it merely anger, or something more? But it was Rose who broke the silence, stepping forward with a sigh.
I never took you for more than a playful suitor, Prince Henry. But it seems I underestimated you.
Her words, veiled in subtlety, suggested a familiarity that went beyond mere acquaintance. The surrounding nobles exchanged knowing glances. Their intrigue piqued. Henry slowly turned to face her.
The person you seek is me.
Rose's declaration sent ripples of shock through the hall. Bronwyn tried her best to keep her expression neutral, but she knew that if anyone had bothered to look her way in that moment, that they would have seen the anger and hurt written across her beautiful face. Prince Henry's gaze on Rose was cold, as if he were analyzing every nuance of her confession. Why send the maid in your stead?
Being the king's consort, I feared his displeasure. You are a friend, Prince Henry, but I hoped to avoid offence on all sides.
In that moment, time seemed to stand still as Prince Henry regarded her. Then, unexpectedly, he erupted into laughter, a sound that echoed through the hall. Rose flinched at his reaction, her facade momentarily faltering, while Bronwyn willed Henry to see through her lies. Quietly, Laura, one of Bronwyn's most trusted ladies-in-waiting, leaned in close, her words barely a whisper.
Your Majesty, did you see the look in Prince Henry's eyes? It wasn't just you who noticed.
Bronwyn had indeed observed a flash of contempt in Prince Henry's gaze, swiftly masked by a diplomatic smile. She hung all of her hopes on that fleeting look. Henry turned back to Rose, the laughter fading from his face. Now, what assurances do I have that you, too, aren't lying to me?
You can make as many inquiries as you please.
To this, Prince Henry had responded with a nonchalant ease. I do not believe that you, Miss Rose, would lie about this. Bronwyn watched as a subtle smirk played on the corner of Prince Henry's mouth. his eyes briefly meeting Rose's with a mix of amusement and warning. "At the very least, I hope it's true this time, Miss Rose, for a second lie would be far less forgivable. And if there is one quality that we in the Celestial Isles hold above all else, it's honor." Cheryl, the unfortunate pawn in their game, withered under Prince Henry's icy stare, a stark contrast to his earlier congeniality, but Rose remained tall. "Since she impersonated you, Miss Rose, perhaps you should decide her punishment." Henry made the suggestion with a vague wave of his hand, before he departed with a straightened posture and a final, searching glance. A glance that fell directly upon Bronwyn.
Back in my chambers, my ladies-in-waiting were ablaze with indignation. "Your Majesty, how can you allow this deception to go unchecked?" Countess Eliza was visibly agitated, her fan moving rapidly to cool her heated cheeks. "Prince Henry knows that Rose is a fraud, yet you seem so calm." Striving to maintain a semblance of peace, I attempted to soothe their concerns. "Do not be too troubled. Prince Henry is not as easily deceived as he appears." Laura, her brow furrowed in frustration, interjected, "It was clear from his reaction. He was aware of the deceit from the start. Perhaps Rose believes her beauty can blind him to the truth." I considered their words. Was Prince Henry knowingly playing into Rose's hands? The possibility lingered, unspoken but palpable. It is indeed strange for him to fall for the same deception twice, but there may be more at play here than we realize. The ladies-in-waiting nodded, their expressions a mix of confusion and curiosity. Could it be that Prince Henry harbours feelings for Rose, despite her lies? I remained silent, my thoughts a whirlwind of possibilities and unanswered questions. As the day's events settled in my mind, I knew that the truth, elusive as it may be, would eventually come to light. For now, I would watch, wait, and weigh my next move. In my own quiet chambers, where the echoes of courtly intrigue seldom reached, I found myself reflecting on the absence of my beloved Majesty, whose daily visits had become a cherished routine. For 2 days, the bird had not graced me with its presence, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of loneliness. My thoughts drifted to the last time Majesty had filled the room with his joyful chirping, a stark contrast to the current silence. Countess Eliza, ever perceptive, noticed my wistful glances towards the window. "Are you thinking about Majesty?" I offered a small, somewhat awkward smile. I was hesitant to express my longing. Admitting that I missed Majesty might inadvertently imply a desire to see Prince Henry, a sentiment I was careful to avoid amidst the complex web of palace politics. Countess Eliza, sensing my reluctance, did not press further. Instead, she turned her attention to selecting an outfit for the evening. From the wardrobe, she produced a dark yellow dress, its elegant, flowing silhouette departure from the more extravagant attire of previous days. "This evening's attire should be more refined, Your Majesty. Tonight's dinner is a smaller affair, the prelude to tomorrow's grand banquet closing the winter solstice celebrations." I expressed my gratitude, appreciative of Countess Eliza's thoughtful preparations. With her assistance, my hair was styled into soft waves, accentuating my delicate features. Dressed in the chosen gown, I regarded my reflection in the mirror with a nod of approval before departing for the Imperial Palace. My steps led me past my office, where I intended to quickly review a few documents, including the guest list for the upcoming special banquet. Among the names, Prince Henry and Grand Duke Bjorn stood out. The latter, hailing from the distant desert nation of Rhett, was a figure of intrigue and importance, a foreign student who had excelled at the Magic Academy. I wondered over the diplomatic nuances of interacting with guests from diverse cultures, especially considering the limited knowledge about Rhett's court etiquette. I recalled that Grand Duke Bjorn had once dismissed the Travelogue, a book about his homeland, as inaccurate. I resolved to approach him with the respect and familiarity due to a distinguished foreign scholar. As the hour for the dinner approached, I emerged from my office to find Countess Eliza and Sir Artemis waiting anxiously. Their relief upon seeing me was evident, and they quickly escorted me back to her room for final touches on my hair and makeup. Upon arriving at the Imperial Palace for the dinner, I was greeted by an unexpected sight. Rose was the first one to welcome me, her expression a blend of surprise and delight.
Sister!
As I stepped into the grand dining room, the first face that greeted me was none other than Rose's. Her visage, often a mask of saccharine sweetness, twisted in a feigned surprise. She clasped her hands over her mouth, feigning a shock that quickly morphed into a coy smile.
Your Majesty!
The sound of her voice, like a siren's call, was enough to nearly shatter the facade of composure I had meticulously crafted. Was Rose, this thorn in my side, to be amongst the 20 esteemed guests at tomorrow's banquet? The thought alone was enough to unsettle me, yet I was certain her name was absent from the guest list I had perused just hours before. It must have been Aldrich's doing. His whims often defied protocol and expectation. As these thoughts swirled in my mind, the dining room's grand doors opened once again. This time they ushered in Prince Henry, flanked by Aldrich and Princess Astrid. The princess's eyes met mine, a silent question dancing in them, but I could only shake my head slightly and proceed to my seat. Prince Henry, as ever a figure of intrigue and elegance, greeted me with a courteous,
"Good evening, Your Majesty."
My response was but a slight nod, barely acknowledging his presence. I could feel Princess Astrid's gaze lingering on me, but I chose to ignore it, taking my seat with a mind burdened by unspoken thoughts. It was only when a servant filled my glass with water that Princess Astrid leaned in, her voice a hushed whisper only I could hear. I thought it was a jest until just moments ago. What was? Her gaze briefly flickered towards Prince Henry, a subtle gesture laden with meaning. Prince Henry. The rumors of his, let's say, proclivities towards women. He's so saccharine around Miss Rose, especially in the presence of His Majesty. He reminds me of human custard. Her analogy, so vivid and unexpected, caught me off guard. A burst of laughter escaped my lips, poorly disguised as a coughing fit. I hastily reached for my glass, hoping to mask my amusement, but it was too late. My outburst had drawn the attention of the entire room. Prince Henry, Rose, and even Aldrich turned their gazes towards me. As I composed myself, dabbing at my lips with a handkerchief, I couldn't help but notice the underlying tensions in the room. Prince Henry maintained his usual air of mystery, though his eyes occasionally flickered towards Rose with an unreadable expression. Aldrich, usually so composed, seemed unusually perturbed, his glances darting between Rose and Prince Henry with an intensity that spoke of unspoken concerns. And Rose, she was the epitome of someone reveling in the moment. Her cheeks were flushed, perhaps from the wine, or, more likely, from the thrill of being the center of attention between a king and a prince. The sight only served to deepen the knot in my stomach. As the dinner progressed, the air became thick with unspoken words and hidden glances. The dance of court politics played out before me, a spectacle of veiled intentions and concealed desires. In this game of thrones and hearts, it seemed everyone had a part to play, and I was no exception. What if it had been Rose whom Prince Henry had fancied from the start? The thought, sudden and unbidden, struck like a dagger to my heart. Yet as quickly as it came, I pushed it aside. Even if Rose hadn't been the one, Aldrich's wandering eye was bound to have led him to another's embrace. This was a truth I had begrudgingly come to accept. Leaning closer, Princess Astrid's voice once again broke through my reverie. Odd, isn't it? Prince Henry's affections for Miss Rose were so apparent before. Now it seems to have cooled. I didn't deign to glance their way. The room soon filled with the evening's guests, and the first course was served amidst a buzz of conversation. Mulled wine, crisp celery, succulent salmon paired with potatoes, and chicken bathed in a rich wine sauce. The feast was well underway when a sudden, jarring crash silenced the room. A golden goblet lay overturned at Aldrich's place, its contents spilling across the fine linen. All eyes turned to Prince Henry, whose gaze bore into Aldrich with a palpable intensity.
"That's rather uncouth, Prince Henry. Is it not rude to pretend ignorance of letters supposedly shared between us? Is it not rude to realize that one has been deceived by such charades? Prince Henry, I'd advise you to mind your language while in my court. Perhaps you should be advising your concubine to exhibit more caution instead of schooling me."
The room drew a collective breath, the tension palpable. Aldrich's face reddened with fury, while Rose's eyes widened in shock. Prince Henry continued, leaning back in his chair with a look of disdain.
"This is an affront. First the maid, and now Miss Rose. Are you mocking the Celestial Isles, me, or the promises I've made?"
Aldrich seemed to seethe with anger, yet Prince Henry remained unflustered.
"Surely Rose penned those letters. A mere moment of confusion, perhaps. The contents can be perplexing, can't they? Does it make sense to be so thoroughly confused?"
Princess Astrid watched the unfolding drama with an air of amusement, her attention riveted on the unfolding scene. She set down her fork, opting instead for a cookie. Her demeanour that of a spectator at a play.
Alas, is Lady Rose's memory so fickle to recall but half of what she's read? If her wit is indeed the problem, then I concede my error,"
Prince Henry declared, his tone dripping with sarcasm. The dining hall, once filled with the clatter of silverware and light conversation, now resonated with the heavy weight of unspoken accusations and veiled threats. The only sound that punctuated the thick air was the gentle crunch of Princess Astrid enjoying her cookie. Her vibrant and resolute character shone through. Her curiosity peaked to its fullest in the unfolding drama.
"Am I the odd one out in this gathering?"
Prince Henry's voice cut through the silence, his eyes scanning the room.
"Yesterday, Miss Rose proclaimed herself to be my friend. I believed her, under the impression that a lady of her renown would not stoop to falsehoods. I spent the entire day in her company, as gentle as human custard, as Princess Astrid so aptly described."
The princess visibly flinched at the mention, a clear indication of her surprise. Prince Henry has an astute sense of hearing, I thought to myself. "That's correct," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper, aligning herself with Prince Henry perhaps as a gesture of camaraderie for his reference to her earlier remark.
"However, during our conversations, I found something peculiar. Miss Rose seemed unfamiliar with more than half of our correspondences. She was oblivious to the recent exchanges and even the contents of the letters from just a week or two ago. Isn't it odd that she's unaware of such crucial details? Even her maid seemed ignorant of these matters."
The room nodded in agreement, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. Rose, caught in the eye of the storm, turned a deep shade of red, embarrassment and anger vying for dominance on her face. Aldrich, meanwhile, fixed Prince Henry with a glare so intense it seemed to crackle with invisible lightning.
"Enough of this charade, Prince Henry,"
Aldrich snapped, his patience evidently fraying. Prince Henry, unfazed by the king's growing ire, retorted,
"It was meant to be a private affair, but it seems the king of Elisaria has chosen to lay it bare for all to see. No, my lady has been falsely accused, and it is my duty to defend her honor."
The room echoed with a collective gasp of surprise. A sly smile crept onto Prince Henry's lips.
Perhaps the person I have been corresponding with is not a lady at all, but a gentleman.
His gaze, sharp and probing, lingered on me for a fleeting moment, sending a shiver down my spine. The realization hit me like a cold wave. I had written, "I am a man," in one of those letters as a playful hint. He couldn't possibly have figured it out, could he? The thought raced through my mind, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. Even if Prince Henry had seen through Rose's deceit, there was no conceivable way he could know that I was the true author of those letters. Rose, who had been silent thus far, suddenly let out a whimper. "It's too much." All the eyes in the room, previously locked in a tense exchange between Aldrich and Prince Henry, now shifted towards her. She sniffled dramatically, portraying herself as the beleaguered protagonist of some tragic play. Prince Henry's eyebrow arched in response, a hint of skepticism in his expression.
Why did you attempt to deceive me, Miss Rose? What was the purpose behind this charade with the maid?
Rose's response was a sob, her voice quivering. "I recited the contents of the letter exactly as they were, yet Prince Henry insists on calling it a lie." I was taken aback. What is she playing at? I wondered, my lips parting in astonishment. Tears began to stream down Rose's cheeks as she continued. "I think I understand why you're doing this. Is it because I am not the woman you desired? Were all your gestures of friendship mere falsehoods?" Rose painted herself as a tragic figure, wronged and abandoned. Aldrich, meanwhile, clenched his jaw, his gaze fixed on Prince Henry with a mixture of anger and suspicion.
Is this true?
Prince Henry responded with a short, incredulous laugh before shaking his head.
You must be out of your mind. Prince Henry, please, for the sake of our friendship and the future relationship between our two kingdoms, stop these implications at once. Leave Miss Rose be. I'm warning you.
Rose's tears flowed freely, her performance eliciting discomfort among some of the nobles. To those unaware of the underlying truth, her conviction seemed genuine, leaving them bewildered. Princess Astrid, her eyes wide with intrigue, watched the scene unfold while absent-mindedly nibbling on her cookies. Duchess Betha, in contrast, observed the situation calmly, her arms folded, her demeanour collected. Amidst the drama, Grand Duke Bourne continued his meal with quiet elegance. His sharp, disconcerting eyes and healthy caramel-coloured skin stood out as he focused on his plate. His movements precise, yet seemingly disinterested in the unfolding spectacle. A thought crossed my mind, a risky gambit that could change everything. Should I reveal myself as Prince Henry's true correspondent? The weight of the decision loomed over me, the consequences of such a revelation unknown and potentially perilous. In this web of deceit and courtly machinations, every move could be either a masterstroke or a fatal blunder. As I sat there, my gaze inadvertently fell on Grand Duke Bjorn. He seemed almost mechanical in his eating, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding around him. But then, unexpectedly, he paused and looked up at me. Our eyes met, and I gave him a slight nod. Bjorn regarded me silently for a moment, his expression inscrutable, before his gaze shifted to Rose and Prince Henry, and a faint, knowing smile played on his lips. What's going through his mind? I wondered, puzzled by his reaction. But the enigma of Grand Duke Capman's behaviour was not the most pressing issue at hand. The internal debate within me reached its conclusion. I must speak up. There's a grave misunderstanding that needs to be rectified. As I prepared to reveal the truth, all eyes in the room turned towards me, their expressions ranging from amusement to curiosity. Rose looked at me with wide, shocked eyes, perhaps realizing that her deception was about to be unveiled. Addressing Aldrich, I kept my expression neutral. Your Majesty, the person who exchanged letters with Prince Henry. It was not Rose. At my declaration, Prince Henry's face brightened with vindication. Rose, on the other hand, looked at me with a sense of betrayal, while Aldrich's complexion paled significantly.
Bronwyn, this is not your place to interfere. Your personal dislike for Rose should not influence this matter.
I stand with the truth. Prince Henry, seizing the moment, added his biting remark.
Your Majesty the Queen must find it frustrating that the King accepts every word from Miss Rose as the gospel truth.
Aldrich's patience finally snapped. Rising to his feet, he drew his sword, a ceremonial piece not meant for battle, but still capable of causing harm. The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically, becoming charged with tension.
Prince Henry, you have insulted my honor. I challenge you to a duel. If I emerge victorious, may I depart this place unscathed?
Prince Henry's words hung in the air, a stark challenge.
If so, then I accept your duel.
The prospect of a duel between the King of the Eastern Lands and the Prince of the West, over a concubine no less, was nothing short of sensational. Such a conflict, if it became public knowledge, would surely cast the nobility and royal families in an even more scandalous light, fueling the fires of gossip and criticism. But beyond the spectacle and the whispers it would incite, it was imperative to prevent such a confrontation. Your Majesty, please calm yourself. Prince Henry, you are our esteemed guest, I implored, raising my voice in hopes of restoring some semblance of order. Thankfully, they were not beyond reason. Both men, perhaps recognizing the gravity of the situation, took their seats once more. The meal resumed, though the atmosphere was significantly subdued. I had never experienced such a tumultuous evening, especially on the eve of such an important banquet. As the meal dragged on, a sense of unease churned in my stomach. Was this chaos a result of Rose's machinations, Aldrich's impulsiveness, or a combination of both? Finally, unable to stomach any more of the tension, I set down my fork and gently dabbed at my mouth with a napkin. It seemed best to end the evening early, rather than prolong the discomfort. Rising from my seat, I prepared to see the guests off. After all, we would all reconvene the following evening. As I made my way to the hall, the guests quickly followed, leaving Aldrich and Henry behind in the dining room. The moment the doors closed behind us, Princess Astrid approached me, her brow furrowed with concern. I hope we can have a more fruitful conversation tomorrow, Your Majesty. Tonight was not ideal for such discussions. Indeed, I share your sentiments. She had been a refreshing presence during this winter solstice celebration. Her strength, humour, and amiable nature were a rare find in these troubled times. I embraced her in a brief, warm hug. Please do come tomorrow, I whispered, a fond farewell in a night fraught with tension and uncertainty. As the guests departed, I was left to ponder the events of the evening. The court's intricate web of alliances and rivalries had never been more apparent, and I knew that the next day's banquet would be pivotal in navigating these treacherous waters. Astrid offered a warm smile and a nod before departing down the hallway with her knights. I bid farewell to the remaining nobles with a customary formality that felt increasingly strained as the evening wore on. As the number of guests dwindled, I noticed Rose moving towards me. Expecting her to speak, I was surprised when she simply stood by my side in silence. Her presence, uninvited and perplexing, left me with a question hanging slightly in the air. Why is she here? Before I could voice my confusion, King Cirium of Boheen approached. Thank you for joining us tonight, Your Highness. In a mimicry that almost felt like a mockery, Rose echoed my gesture, bowing alongside me as if we were a united front. King Sirium's response was hesitant, his tone stammering slightly as he glanced between Rose and me, perhaps misconstruing the nature of our interaction. As he departed, Rose turned to me with a tone that feigned amity. "Are you all right, sister?" The absurdity of the situation was palpable, yet there was no social convention or precedent that I could invoke to distance myself from her. Determined to escape her unwelcome shadow, I made my way to a marquis of a distant land, a known ally. But to my dismay, Rose followed, flashing a coquettish smile that made the marquis chuckle. She persisted in this behaviour until only Grand Duke Bjorn remained. As Rose approached the Grand Duke, his demeanour shifted. "My lord," she said, her voice taking on a deeper, more sombre tone. It was a crude imitation of my own voice, not a perfect replication, but unsettlingly close. "Will you be attending the special banquet tomorrow?" But her words fell flat as Grand Duke Bjorn passed us without a word, his silence a rebuke in itself. More than the Duke's dismissal, it was Rose's attempt to impersonate me that struck a nerve. A desperate act that reeked of deceit. The evening's events had taken a toll, leaving me to navigate a labyrinth of duplicity and intrigue. Rose's actions, perplexing and audacious, were but a part of a larger, more complex game. A game that demanded my utmost caution and strategy. "Miss Rose." "Yes, Your Majesty." Rose's response was delivered in her characteristic sweet tone. This was a stark contrast to the person who had looked at me with a sense of betrayal in the dining room. Striving to maintain composure, I spoke with a calmness that belied my inner turmoil. "I had intended to ask you this after the winter solstice celebrations, but the situation demands clarity now. Why did you falsely claim that I had sent you gifts?" Confusion flickered across Rose's face. "Falsely claimed?" As I held her gaze, she seemed to grapple with the weight of the accusation. "I did not lie, Your Majesty. It's true that you sent many gifts my way." Her voice trailed off as I interrupted. "Whatever misunderstanding there might be, I assure you, I have not sent you any gifts." "Are you upset because I said I wrote the letters?" Rose's voice was a mix of confusion and apprehension. As I continued to look at her silently, she clasped her hands together, tears beginning to well in her eyes. "But Viscountess Verdi told me you would never admit to it, that it would embarrass you. I was only playing a role." "Playing?" "Yes, and I was helping you." My patience was wearing thin. "You didn't want anyone to know you were the secret correspondent. Why are you always so harsh with me?" Before I could respond, the door opened, revealing Aldrich and Prince Henry, both looking tense and drawn. They had evidently been arguing. At their entrance, Rose's tears flowed freely. Aldrich, surprised, approached her and tenderly wiped her cheeks with his sleeve.
"Rose? Why are you crying?"
Aldrich's concern was evident. Glaring at me, he demanded,
"What happened, Bronwyn? Why is Rose upset?"
I merely inquired why she claimed to have received gifts from me.
"And you confronted her about that?"
Aldrich's expression hardened. "Yes, she's been telling others. Who else should I ask?" My gaze met his, searching for understanding. Aldrich seemed torn, his lips pressed into a thin line as he alternated his gaze between Rose and me. Finally, he sighed.
"If Rose is mistaken, perhaps we should just overlook it."
"I cannot allow my name to be used in such a manner."
"It's not Rose's fault. I sent her the gifts, using your name."
The revelation hit me like a wave. Aldrich had sent the gifts in my name. I felt my head spin with the complexity of it all. Rose, her eyes wide with shock, looked at Aldrich, tears clinging to her lashes, in a delicate balance of confusion and surprise. "Is that true, Your Majesty?" I asked, my voice barely concealing my frustration. Aldrich nodded, acknowledging the misunderstanding he had caused, and muttered an apology. But Rose, shaking her head, responded with a touch of joy. "No, I'm happy. You did it for me." I felt my fist clench involuntarily. The gossip and scandal that had circulated about me were a direct result of their actions, yet it was Rose whom Aldrich apologized to. Rose seemed to find his actions endearing, which only fueled my growing resentment. Previously, I had made a conscious effort to distance myself from Rose, telling myself to ignore her, to look away, to be indifferent. But now it was clear. I harbored a deep-seated hatred for her, and even more so for Aldrich. Unable to contain my irritation, I interjected, "If this is indeed your fault—" Aldrich, previously lost in a romantic reverie with Rose, turned to me, looking startled, as if he had thought the matter settled. Meeting his gaze with a cold stare, I pressed on. "You must take responsibility, Aldrich. You admitted as much."
Do we really need to address this here and now?
"Yes. Now that you've acknowledged your fault, you should be held accountable." Aldrich's complexion turned ashen. I noticed him stealing glances at Rose and Prince Henry, his pride wounded in front of a distinguished guest and the woman he loved. Yet the pride he sought to protect was not the dignity of a king, but that of a man. Should I assist him in preserving this facade? No. "Do you expect me to weep like Rose? Because I expect an apology."
Apologize?
"Yes, apologize for misusing my name."
Fine. I'm sorry.
Aldrich said grudgingly, clearly without any remorse. "And as Miss Rose has been disseminating false information, she too should take responsibility and rectify the situation." Aldrich exhaled heavily, a mixture of frustration and resignation in his sigh.
Is that really necessary?
"Are you worried about losing face, Your Majesty? My reputation has already been tarnished."
If your reputation was so easily damaged by mere gifts to Rose, then you are weak and superficial from the start.
"And it is equally weak and superficial to not correct such falsehoods. Please see to it promptly."
The Queen should address this herself. You dislike others speaking on your behalf, do you not? Why are you being so petty?
"Indeed."
You were never like this before.
"I could say the same to you. And refrain from speaking to me in such a disrespectful manner, Aldrich." The air was thick with tension, the clear reflection of the rift that had formed between us. One that went beyond mere protocol, and into the realm of personal affronts and deep-seated grievances.
Henry stood captivated, observing Bronwyn's austere and glacial demeanour. Her profile, etched against the dimming light of the hall, held a stoic grace that enthralled him. Her voice, low and gentle, yet imbued with an icy edge, resonated in his ears. He wondered, with a sense of yearning, how it would sound if she uttered his name with that same tone. His imagination ran wild, and he found himself longing to kneel before this formidable queen, to kiss her hand reverently, to hear her command him in that cold, authoritative voice. What would it be like to obey her, to fulfill her every command, and then, perhaps, to daringly defy her? His initial curiosity about the foreign queen had propelled him to travel to the palace. Rumours had painted her as a figure of steel or ice, yet he had witnessed a surprising softness and charm, particularly in her interactions with birds. The rumours, though not entirely misguided, had failed to capture the complexity of her character. Henry had observed her strength, but also glimpsed her vulnerability. The way she fought back tears in solitude, speaking softly to herself. To the people, she was merely the king's queen, a figure expected to uphold a certain image. But to Henry, she was extraordinary. He had initially thought her to be strong, masking a vulnerable core, but now realized that beneath that vulnerability lay an even greater strength. His initial curiosity and attraction had grown into a deep-seated anxiety after meeting her. Why did she seem to ignore his attempts at making his presence known? Why did she act as if she didn't recognize him? Why didn't she seek him out? The comfort and jest shared in their letters, was it all one-sided? Or perhaps her pride prevented her from acknowledging any need for support or care? These thoughts swirled in his mind, a mix of admiration, intrigue, and a burgeoning sense of something deeper, something that tugged at his heart with an intensity that both excited and unnerved him. Henry's approach towards the Queen was initially marked by an underlying anger. He found himself increasingly agitated by the burdens and pains she had to endure, especially those inflicted upon her by others. His own experiences had taught him how challenging it was to maintain one's reputation, a struggle that had nearly led him to physical confrontation in the past. "Are you jealous of Rose, by any chance?" Aldrich's biting remark to Bronwyn caused her jaw to tighten, igniting a fiercer impulse within Henry than he had experienced in the dining room. While the stoic, frozen demeanor of the Queen had its allure, the circumstances that forged such a facade were far from charming. In his mind, Henry could hear Haxon's stern admonitions, warning him not to stir up trouble. Yet the frustration of being unable to officially defend her honor gnawed at him. "Your Majesty, King Aldrich, please, you must be more discerning," Henry finally interjected, despite knowing well that Haxon would be incensed by his intervention. With their own king bedridden and court affairs in disarray, did he truly want to provoke the King of Elysaria? "This doesn't concern you, Prince." "I am a witness. How can I remain indifferent?" Henry countered lightly, but his grin was defiant as he stood beside the Queen. "Do not worry, Your Majesty. I shall ensure that the truth is known. Your reputation will not suffer on account of this folly." Their exchange was interrupted by Haxon, who rushed to Prince Henry's side and swiftly escorted him away. As they walked out of the palace, Haxon's voice was a constant in Henry's ear. "I heard you talking about reputation. Why would you go this route?" Henry strode in silence, Haxon's admonitions ringing in his ears. "Do what you're best at, Prince. Fight from the shadows, not openly. Why try something you're not adept at? And why, with the King of Elysaria, our efforts will be in vain at this rate?" Haxon's nagging intensified as they entered the privacy of their quarters, but Henry, undeterred, pulled up a chair and sat down. "What do you plan to do with that chair? Hit me with it?" Haxon half joked, but half worried, his hand going to the hilt of his sword. But Henry only growled at him. "Sit down." Henry paced, while his mind was already racing with plans and possibilities, undaunted by the challenges that lay ahead. His resolve to protect the Queen's honor, despite the risks, was unwavering. As Haxon reluctantly took a seat, Prince Henry reached out and, with a touch to his head, imbued him with ancient power. In an instant, Haxon transformed into a bluebird, his clothes collapsing into a heap on the floor. The bird's eyes widened in surprise as Prince Henry approached his desk and extended an object towards him. "Take this to Elegy." Haxon, now in avian form, seemed hesitant, but Henry reassured him. I won't get myself into trouble. Go and deliver it. I'll fight from the shadows, just as you advised.
Meanwhile, in a different part of the palace, my quiet musings about Prince Henry caught Countess Eliza's attention. She was engaged in a game of chess nearby, and turned to me, curious. What did you say, Your Highness? I placed the book I was holding upside down on my lap, contemplating whether to share my thoughts. My ladies-in-waiting were already aware that I was the true correspondent of the letters, but I wondered if my words could sway any unfavourable opinions about Prince Henry. Prince Henry, I began, picking up my teacup and taking a sip. He seems to be a better man than the rumours suggest. Laura, playing chess against Countess Eliza, suddenly moved a knight on the board, where the Countess's attention was diverted. I continued. And he realised that neither the maid nor the slave were the ones writing those letters. Even though he has a reputation as a womanizer, he seems more principled than other nobles. Countess Eliza, noticing the illicit move, gently slapped Laura's hand and reset the knight to its original position. I added, Indeed, despite his carefree demeanour, he is not frivolous. One of the ladies-in-waiting, lounging comfortably in an armchair, chuckled. I particularly enjoyed seeing the truth about the slave's lies come to light. The conversation continued, weaving a more nuanced picture of Prince Henry, one that contrasted with the prevalent rumours. It was clear that his actions and intentions were far more complex than most believed, and I found myself inadvertently becoming a defender of his character. The sympathetic murmurs among my ladies-in-waiting continued to build in the room. Did you notice how Prince Henry's demeanour changed when she blatantly lied? It was as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing, one lady commented, her voice tinged with disbelief. Indeed, it must have been an eye-opener for the foreign nobles who have been associating with her, another added, her voice laced with a hint of satisfaction. Surely they see her true colours now. However, Sir Artemis, who had been quietly observing from his post by the door, interjected with a note of scepticism.
I wouldn't be so certain.
The ladies-in-waiting, surprised by his intervention, turned to him with curious and questioning eyes. Sir Artemis appeared slightly uncomfortable under their collective gaze, scratching his cheek nervously.
Baron Lant, who oversees Miss Rose's affairs, seems to have a different perspective.
Different? In what way? Laura inquired, her eyes widening with interest. I set my now empty teacup back on the table, my attention fully on Sir Artemis. Baron Lant was a name familiar to me, Aldrich's secretary, known for his intelligence and his apparent fondness for Rose. It was a matter of concern if Baron Lant was actively working to sway the rumours in Rose's favour. Sir Artemis hesitated for a moment before elaborating.
Baron Lant speaks of Miss Rose in glowing terms. He's been quite vocal in defending her character, painting a picture that contrasts starkly with what we witnessed.
Countess Eliza leaned forward, her interest piqued. But surely, after what transpired, his efforts must be in vain.
Not necessarily. Baron Lant is quite influential and well-respected. His words carry weight among the nobility. He's been suggesting that Miss Rose was merely misunderstood and that her intentions were always noble.
The ladies-in-waiting exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of surprise and concern. Laura spoke up again. But what about the Queen? How can he justify the situation without compromising Her Majesty's reputation? Sir Artemis sighed.
That's the crux of the matter. Baron Lant has been delicately insinuating that the Queen was aware of the gifts, and that any miscommunication was a result of misunderstandings within the court. He's painting it as a minor blip in an otherwise harmonious relationship.
Countess Eliza shook her head, disbelief evident in her voice. That's preposterous. After what all we witnessed, How could anyone believe such a story? Sir Artemis shrugged.
People believe what they want to believe, especially when it's presented by someone as credible as Baron Lant. His narrative is compelling to those who weren't present to see the truth for themselves.
This could potentially damage the Queen's reputation further, if people start believing that she was complicit in this deception. We must counter this narrative. It's crucial that the truth be known, not only for my sake, but for the integrity of the court. The room fell silent, each lady contemplating the gravity of the situation. It was clear that Baron Lant's influence posed a significant challenge, one that required a careful and strategic response.
Your Majesty, we may need to consider a more direct approach to dispel these rumors. It's essential that your side of the story is heard and believed.
Countess Eliza added, Perhaps we could gather support from the other nobles who value honesty and integrity. Their voices could help counteract the narrative Baron Lant is spreading. I agree. We must act swiftly and decisively. The truth must prevail, and we cannot allow falsehoods to overshadow it. As the conversation continued, plans began to take shape. It was clear that the battle for the truth would be fought not just in the court, but in the hearts and minds of the people. The stakes were high, but the resolve to defend the truth was even higher. The air in the room grew heavier as Sir Artemis continued.
Because of Miss Rosa's beauty and charm, some believe that the King and Prince Henry are vying for her affections.
It was clear that Baron Lant had masterfully orchestrated the spread of these conflicting rumours, knowing well that in the court of public opinion, at least one version would find believers. Laura, overcome with frustration, abruptly shut the chessboard. I absolutely despise her. Countess Eliza, ever the voice of reason, admonished her gently. Mind your words, Laura. You are a lady-in-waiting to the Queen. Such language reflects poorly on Her Majesty. I do maintain decorum in public, Countess, but in private I find no other way to express my indignation. As Laura's outburst resonated in the room, a sudden tap on the window drew our attention. Majesty. The moment Majesty, the midnight hawk, arrived through the window, a wave of joy washed over me. It had been several days since his last visit, and I eagerly opened the window to let him in. As he flew inside, I couldn't contain my happiness and embraced him gently. Majesty responded by nestling close. Laura, watching this endearing scene, couldn't help but giggle. That bird is so sweet. Look at how he holds Her Majesty. Maybe he's not just any bird. I playfully scolded the ladies for their teasing, but I couldn't help but share their amusement. Gently, I placed Majesty on my lap and stroked his soft feathers. His large, violet eyes fluttered shut as he drifted off, though he occasionally startled awake and peered up at me. I missed you. Majesty looked at me with those wise, understanding eyes. A thought crossed my mind. Majesty reminded me so much of Prince Henry. Perhaps it was because he was Henry's bird. Or maybe there was a deeper connection. Suddenly I remembered the note attached to Majesty's leg. I carefully removed the piece of paper, placing Majesty beside me as I unfolded the note. It read,
I had wagered my identity. Why don't you want to participate in the bet?
The message, undoubtedly from Prince Henry, left me wondering. Did he suspect I was his secret correspondent? Our recent encounter had been cut short due to the altercation with Aldrich, leaving no opportunity to explore this revelation. After a moment of contemplation, I penned my response. Please keep our friendship by letter only. It's easier this way. Majesty watched intently as I wrote. As soon as I finished, he examined the parchment, then began making peculiar noises. It seemed he was expressing his owner's dissatisfaction with my reply. Don't be so upset, Majesty. I prefer it this way. Majesty's protest continued, his movements agitated. It was clear that he, acting as Prince Henry's proxy, was trying to convey a message of disapproval. Despite his antics, I felt a twinge of guilt for keeping our friendship confined to letters. Yet given the complex web of court politics and personal entanglements, it seemed the safest course. I simply couldn't risk it, not for myself, nor for my kingdom, no matter how much I wanted to. As I watched Majesty, now hopping with a mix of frustration and persistence, I couldn't help but wonder about the depth of Prince Henry's feelings. Did he truly wish to deepen our connection beyond the safety of written words? What did that mean for us, entangled as we were in the delicate dance of courtly intrigue and unspoken affections?
Hours later, in the dark of night, when all other souls in the castle slept, Bronwyn remained awake. In the shaded quarters of the grand chamber, where heavy drapes of royal crimson hid the world outside, she paced, her thoughts as tumultuous as a stormy sea. Aldrich and Rose, her own husband and the woman who now shared his bed, were the crux of a growing scandal, a maelstrom that threatened to swallow her whole. And now the very thought of engaging in correspondence with Prince Henry, a man as notorious for his cruel cunning as he was for his roguish charm, filled her with a sense of foreboding. Of course, Majesty was still by her side, watching.
If your master and I meet, it will be a clash of realms, not a meeting of friends.
Bronwyn fretted aloud, her voice echoing slightly off the high chamber walls.
In the eyes of the court, our every word, our every gesture will be scrutinized. We would be like pawns in a grand game of chess, watched by a myriad of eyes waiting for a misstep.
Her heart felt heavy with the burden of royalty, a mantle she bore with grace, yet at times it seemed an unbearable weight. Her gaze drifted to the window, where the moonlight cast a silvery hue on the room, reflecting her inner turmoil.
I've become no more than a source of courtly entertainment, a pawn in Aldrich and Rose's game. Amidst these circumstances, can you fathom the scandal if it were discovered that I am exchanging letters with the infamous Prince Henry?
It was in moments like these, when the weight of her crown felt heaviest, Bronwyn found solace in confiding her deepest worries to the Midnight Hawk. Perhaps it was the intelligence she perceived in the eyes of her confidant. Or maybe it was the sheer necessity to voice her fears, but she found herself confessing her true feelings. Suddenly, startled by the realization of her frankness, she turned to the bird, her only true audience in these moments of vulnerability.
I know your master is not the monster that the rumors paint him to be. I believe he's a good man deep down. Why do you look so embarrassed, my feathered friend?
In a separate chamber, adorned with silks of lavender and silver, Rose lay reclined, a vision of fragile beauty. Beside her, King Aldrich ran his fingers through her silvery tresses, a gesture of affection that belied the turmoil beneath. Prince Henry's reputation precedes him, Aldrich warned in a low, steady voice. He's known for his cruelty, for his way with women. You mustn't trust so blindly.
But I didn't know.
It's all right. We all err at times. But learn from this. Do not repeat such mistakes. Not in this court. Not in any royal court.
You don't believe this was my fault, do you?
Of course not. It was he who caused the disturbance. Rose leaned into Aldrich's shoulder, seeking comfort in his presence.
But I'm grateful that His Majesty protected me.
I'm glad to. I hope you're feeling better. Rose's thoughts turned to the upcoming banquet, a prospect that brought a semblance of joy to her heart.
Tomorrow's the special banquet. Let us take our ease, socialise. I'd love to befriend Princess Astrid.
Aldrich, normally responsive to her cheerful disposition, remained stoic, his thoughts elsewhere. Rose noticed his distant demeanour, her brow furrowing in concern.
What's wrong, Your Majesty?
Aldrich hesitated, the words heavy on his tongue. Rose, you won't be able to attend the special banquet tomorrow. The words fell between them like a stone in still water, rippling through the room with the weight of unspoken implications, leaving Rose with a sense of foreboding about what the morrow might bring. She gazed upon Aldrich, her eyes wide with disbelief. The news he had just delivered hung in the air like a heavy shroud, and despite his regal bearing, Aldrich felt a tinge of discomfort at her reaction, a feeling unbecoming of a king.
But why, Your Majesty?
Rose's voice quivered, echoing her bewilderment. Aldrich, his posture as rigid as his resolve, replied, There can only be 20 special guests at the banquet. It is a matter of tradition and prestige.
But I can't be one of them?
The Queen and I invite 10 people each. The invitations have already been dispatched.
You could be flexible and add one more. You're the king.
Aldrich shook his head slightly. But, Rose, the moment we bend the rules, it sets a precedent that cannot be undone. The consequences could be disastrous. In this case, no matter how small, it means that the royal banquet loses its exclusivity. It is an event steeped in tradition and decorum. Rose's expression transformed into one of shock, her eyes unblinking as she grappled with his refusal. Aldrich, feeling compelled to elaborate, continued, As I've said, it's only for those specifically invited. It wouldn't be prudent to alter the guest list on a whim.
But I am your concubine. Your lady.
Rose protested, her cheeks flushing with a mix of embarrassment and frustration.
I thought my presence there would be all-encompassing. You should have extended an invitation to me too.
Rose's face reddened further as she whimpered, her emotions teetering on the edge. Aldrich, his heart softening at her distress, took out a handkerchief and gently dabbed at the tears that had begun to form in her eyes. However, the tears persisted, rendering his efforts futile. Do you truly wish to attend that badly?
I told everyone at the dinner that I would be at the special banquet.
Aldrich frowned. You should have discussed this with me beforehand.
It seems strange to ask. After all, you took me to dinner with the special guests. So naturally, I assumed.
It's my oversight, Aldrich conceded with a sigh, his hand rubbing her shoulder in an attempt to comfort her. Yet Rose continued to cry, her hope diminishing as the silence stretched on.
Yet in the end, you're still not taking me.
Aldrich watched her, his jaw clenched at the innocent sincerity of her weeping. Accustomed to the silent, controlled tears of the court nobles, Rose's open display of emotion was both refreshing and heart-wrenching. I'm sorry, Rose. Please, don't cry. But her sobbing and her arguments persisted.
You know what happened today? If I don't attend, Prince Henry will take advantage. He threatened to spread rumours about me.
Aldrich contemplated her words, aware of the balance of power at play. The banquet's guests were a collection of foreign royals and influential nobles, key figures whose opinions mattered greatly. Don't worry, I will be there to defend your honor. I won't let Prince Henry utter a word out of line. Yet Rose's expression remained downcast. Aldrich, after a moment of silent contemplation, let out a resigned sigh. I will speak with the Queen. Perhaps a seat can be spared. Some guests are our own subjects, so it shouldn't pose an international issue. A flicker of hope sparked in Rose's eyes. a spark too fiery to be attributed to mere joy.
The morning sun, a harbinger of the day's splendour, filtered through the gossamer curtains, casting intricate shadows that danced upon the floor in the lightness of the window frames. I stirred, awakening from the clutches of slumber, my heart surprisingly light despite the turbulent incidents of the previous day. Perhaps, I mused, it was the unexpected involvement of Prince Henry and Majesty that buoyed my spirits. With a languid yawn, I propped myself up, shaking off the last vestiges of sleep. My mind was a whirl of thoughts, but none heavy enough to dampen the sense of anticipation for the day. I brushed my hand over my face, a simple gesture to chase away the remnants of dreams. In the adjacent chamber, my ladies-in-waiting were already at work, preparing a bath that beckoned with its promises of warmth and relaxation. The air was perfumed with the scent of petals and salt, an aroma that spoke of luxury and care. My garments were shed, and I sank into the inviting embrace of the water, letting the heat seep into my muscles, unknotting the tension held within. I leaned back, closing my eyes, surrendering to the gentle ministrations of the ladies who massaged my scalp with practiced, delicate touches. Finally wrapped in the soft embrace of a robe, I made my way back to the bedroom. The day was significant, the last day of the winter solstice celebration, and the day of the royal banquet. The dress chosen for me was a masterful blend of extravagance and subtlety, embodying both calm and splendour. Adorning myself with diamond earrings and a crown, not one meant for ceremony, but a piece that was both elegant and comfortably light. I examined my notes on the special guests, my attention divided as the ladies styled my hair to complement the crown. My preparations, however, were interrupted by the arrival of one of Aldrich's secretaries. Dressed as I was, I permitted his entry. The secretary, with palpable air of embarrassment, conveyed his message.
Your Majesty, the King requests your presence.
I noted the hint of urgency in his voice. Now?
Yes, it concerns the special banquet. Please, Your Majesty, time is of the essence.
Sensing the gravity of the situation, I gave a quick nod and instructed the ladies to hasten their work. We can finish the styling upon my return. Yes, Your Majesty. I'll have my breakfast after returning, then. Please help yourselves in the meantime. I offered, before following the secretary through the winding corridors of the palace, my mind racing with possibilities. War declarations, complaints or insults from the foreign dignitaries, sudden cancellations. Upon entering Aldrich's chamber, my eyes swiftly moved to Rose, who was perched on the bed. I feigned ignorance of her presence, yet I couldn't help but notice her gaze fixed upon me, or rather upon the crown adorning my head. Her stare was intense, almost enchanted, and it lingered without wavering. I felt a frown crease my brow, discomforted by her gaze, but it was Aldrich who broke the silence first.
Is it possible to accommodate one additional guest?
Is there an issue? Have Secretary Bimmerly or the Conjurer suddenly decided to attend? I queried, thinking of those who had previously declined their invitations.
No, it's not them.
Then who? My curiosity was piqued. Who could warrant such a request at this late hour? Aldrich seemed to struggle with his words, an awkward tension filling the air between us.
I wish to bring Rose. I want Rose to accompany me to the banquet.
Aldrich's words, uttered with an unmistakable firmness, hung heavily in the air, a declaration that set the stage for a confrontation of wills. For a moment, silence reigned as I processed the gravity of his request. No, Your Majesty. Aldrich's brow furrowed, a visible sign of his displeasure at my flat refusal.
No? What do you mean, no? Surely one seat can be arranged. There must be someone among your invitees who could be persuaded to relinquish their place.
It might be possible to seek consent for a change, but consider the implications. Should Secretary Bimmerly or the Conjurer attend, they would justifiably be affronted by a sudden cancellation of their invitation for your concubine. The temperature in the room seemed to drop with each word spoken. Aldrich's expression turned colder, his eyes a mirror of the brewing storm within.
Yes, I understand the connotation of your words, Bronwyn. You seem ever eager to remind both me and Rose of her station.
The response would be identical regardless of the person, whether it be my own lover or another's concubine, not just Rose.
Then why not exclude someone like the Duchess of Bether? That old harlot has been to enough of these banquets in her lifetime.
I have no desire to cause hurt to those I hold dear, Your Majesty, I replied, my voice firm, conveying the weight of my conviction. Aldrich's reaction was palpable. His gaze upon me sharpened, the lines of his face hardening with what seemed like an accusation of heartlessness.
Bronwyn, I've never known you to be so cold.
As I should be. A queen needs to be cold. She needs to be logical. I cannot follow the heat of my passions, and neither should you.
What did you say?
An international scandal loomed on the horizon, a threat that could tarnish both our reputations and the dignity of the crown. If Aldrich chose to disregard his guests, the fallout would land squarely on his shoulders. However, if I were to set aside a guest in favour of Rose, I would bear the brunt of societal judgment, accused of favouritism, perhaps even of impropriety. The rumour mill had already been churning following the incident where Aldrich had presented gifts to Rose under my name. While that episode had been a personal affront, disrespecting esteemed guests at such a crucial event would be an unfavourable breach of decorum. A misstep that would not be easily forgotten by our peers. But Aldrich's manoeuvring was not born of folly. Even now, as he stood before me, he was calculating, pushing me into a corner, forcing my hand. His strategy was clear, to shield himself from criticism while appeasing Rose's wounded pride. I stood my ground, my resolve unwavering. Your Majesty, the banquet is a delicate balance of diplomacy and prestige. Every guest, every seat is a statement of our kingdom's values and priorities. To displace a distinguished guest for personal reasons would not only be a breach of protocol, but a misstep that could have far-reaching consequences. Aldrich's gaze did not waver, but I could see the calculations turning behind his eyes, weighing the impact of my words. This was a chess game of royal proportions, and the next move was his. I am not intentionally being cruel. Rose is your concubine, not mine. I fail to understand why you are attempting to compel me to undertake actions that even you, as the king, cannot justify. Aldrich's jaw clenched visibly at my words, a silent testament to his growing frustration. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Rose, her gaze flickering between us, a frightened look etched upon her face. Despite the tension that filled the room, I could not find it within myself to feel any better about the situation. Adhering to the dictates of royal etiquette, I offered a formal farewell, and exited the room with a dignified gait, my head held high. Upon my return to the Western Palace, the anxious faces of my ladies-in-waiting greeted me. Their concern was palpable, a reflection of the strain that my recent encounters with the king had wrought. You should have eaten without me. How could we? We were worried something terrible had happened. You don't seem yourself after meeting with the king these days. I sought to reassure them, to dispel the cloud of worry that hung over us. Together we sat down to breakfast, yet I found it challenging to eat. My appetite eluded me, and I managed only a light meal of soup and pudding. Afterward, the ladies-in-waiting busied themselves with preparations for the party, leaving me alone at my desk. I pored over the schedule for the post-winter solstice celebrations. My duties were manifold, bidding farewell to the foreign guests, making arrangements for those who wished to extend their stay, and addressing any incidents that had arisen. Legal matters involving foreigners had to be resolved before they left our borders. The weight of these responsibilities sat heavily upon my shoulders. As the day wore on, the time for the feast rapidly approached. I stood before the mirror, inspecting my reflection. Noting that my ladies-in-waiting, too, were splendidly attired for the occasion. "Will you attend the party after the royal banquet?" I asked one of them, my voice reflecting the uncertainty of my own plans. "I'm not entirely sure if I will. I'll have to see how the evening progresses. But what's the matter, Laura?" Within the reflection of the mirror, I noticed her troubled expression. "Lady Alice is unwell and cannot attend the party. If neither you nor she can be there, I'll make a brief appearance and then take my leave." Laura, typically sociable and eager to mingle with her peers, seemed disinterested in engaging with the other noblewomen in the absence of familiar faces. "If you wait for me, Laura, I will be there." It was important, I knew, to maintain the bonds of camaraderie and support among us, especially in times when the royal court seemed to be a labyrinth of intrigue and shifting alliances. The promise seemed to brighten Laura's spirits somewhat, and I was reminded once again of the importance of these small gestures. These moments of connection that helped to anchor us amidst the swirling tides of courtly life. As I turned back to my reflection, I steeled myself for the evening ahead, knowing that each step, each word would be scrutinized. Laura's face lit up with a smile that radiated excitement. With a spring in her step, she hastened towards the grand hall for the party, followed by the other ladies-in-waiting. I, however, made my way to the throne room, where the banquet was to be held. The chamber was alive with the sound of lively music, creating an atmosphere of joviality and grandeur. The special guests, a collection of nobility and esteemed figures, mingled in small clusters, engaged in animated conversations. As I approached Princess Astrid, offering casual nods to the attendees, my path was intercepted by Grand Duke Bjorn. He stood imposingly, a champagne glass in hand, flanked on either side by a large statue, holding a flower basket and a sword, and a servant with a champagne bottle, effectively blocking any other passage. "Are you enjoying yourself?" I inquired, realizing a simple nod wouldn't suffice given his proximity. As I prepared to bow in greeting, I recalled that just yesterday he had ignored both me and Rose. This memory lingered at the back of my mind, casting a shadow over the interaction.
"Your Majesty, these festivities are different from back home."
"Does the food suit your taste?" I asked, offering him a small bow, almost reflexively as he continued to scrutinize me with his long, sharp eyes that bore an intensity hard to decipher. This was Grand Duke Bjorn's first invitation to our banquet. Until last year, I had never interacted with him, and knew little of his character. All that was known to me was that he hailed from a desert country, and was a distinguished graduate of a magical academy. As the silence stretched, waiting for his response, Bjorn unexpectedly posed a question of his own.
"Is this the state of Elisaria?"
"What do you mean?"
"In red, the emote and Emona's emotions are one."
"The king and queen are one. How wonderful for them."
"You know what it means?"
Hint of surprise tinged his voice. "Not enough to say I'm fluent. Only a few basic words." Bjorn's gaze lingered on me for a moment longer, as if measuring my words, or perhaps searching for something more in my response. The conversation, while seemingly casual, felt laden with unspoken implications, a subtle dance of words and meanings that was all too common in the intricate world of court politics. After a brief pause, he finally spoke.
"In our land, the unity of the king and queen is not just a ceremonial bond. It is a reflection of the state of the nation, a symbol of harmony and strength."
His words resonated with me, echoing the sentiments that often weighed heavily on my mind. The relationship between the monarchs was more than a mere alliance. It was a barometer of the empire's health, a representation of its unity and stability. "In Elisaria, we too value the bond between the king and queen," I replied, keenly aware of the implications of his statement. "It is a cornerstone of our governance, and a symbol of our nation's prosperity." Bjorn nodded, his expression unreadable.
If Imot's lover is in front of her, she would be killed immediately.
He delivered this statement with the utmost seriousness, as though it were a mundane fact about the weather. His voice betrayed no hint of the shock that his words had elicited in me. I couldn't mask my astonishment.
Are you not able to do that, Your Majesty?
In this great empire, even as a queen, I cannot sanction the taking of a life without just cause. A trial must be held first. We are bound by the laws of justice and due process.
Foolish that you cannot eat soup out of your own bowl.
His remark was cryptic, but it was clear that his statement implied I lacked control over my own domain. His words stung, yet the laws of Red were not the laws of Elysaria. Here, concubines were legally recognized, and the act of a queen killing a king's mistress would lead to dire consequences beyond all imaginings. What options did that leave me? Should I risk my life and position to dispatch with Rose? The thought was ludicrous. However, before I could form a response, Grand Duke Bjorn departed, his glass of champagne in hand. I exhaled a sigh of relief, albeit tinged with a sense of frustration. To him I must have appeared feeble, perhaps even pathetic. How strange, I thought to myself. It was Aldrich who made Rose a concubine, so why am I perceived as the pathetic one? As I looked around the room for Astrid, I found she had moved elsewhere. I shook my head, clearing the remnants of my conversation with Bjorn, and my gaze landed on Duchess Betha. But then, a voice.
Majesty.
I startled, and as I turned, I found myself face to face with Prince Henry. How are you?
I'd like to speak with you for a moment.
His tone, serious yet tinged with an undercurrent of urgency, worried me. I nodded, intrigued and slightly wary of what he might have to say. Of course, Prince Henry. What is on your mind? He glanced around, ensuring a degree of privacy before continuing.
I couldn't help but overhear part of your conversation with the Grand Duke. A rather dark discussion about leadership and control, wasn't it?
I hesitated, weighing my words carefully. It was a discussion of different cultural norms and laws. Grand Duke Bjorn's perspective is enlightening, albeit quite different from our own. Prince Henry's eyes narrowed slightly.
It seems you are under considerable pressure, Majesty. The weight of the crown is a heavy one. The eyes of the court are always watching, always judging.
I felt a twinge of vulnerability at his words. It was rare for someone to acknowledge the burdens I bore as queen. Indeed, the crown does not rest easy on the head, but it is my duty to uphold the laws and traditions of our empire. He nodded, a look of understanding crossing his face.
And yet you must navigate these treacherous waters with grace and wisdom. It's a delicate balance, maintaining the respect of your subjects while also asserting your authority.
His insight was surprisingly astute, and I found myself momentarily at a loss for words. You speak as though you have experience in such matters, Prince Henry. He smiled wryly.
I've had my fair share of challenges in asserting my authority and maintaining control. And let me tell you, Majesty, that there is always a way to maintain control. Some of those methods are well within the light, while others, well, darkness has its purpose, does it not?
Prince Henry's expression, a mix of seriousness and melancholy, was a stark contrast to his usual demeanour. Gone was the characteristic smile and the proud bearing that I had come to associate with him. Nodding, I signalled for him to speak, recalling how he had once aided me in a moment of need. When he spoke, his voice was soft.
It's all right.
He deftly picked up 2 glasses of champagne from a passing servant, subtly directing us towards a spot where the music's volume would shield our conversation from eavesdroppers. His consideration in choosing a location that would not provoke further gossip, given his reputation and our previous interactions, was unexpectedly thoughtful. As I contemplated this surprising aspect of his character, Prince Henry extended a glass of champagne towards me, which I accepted gracefully. He, however, merely toyed with his own glass, not taking a sip, as if the weight of his thoughts prevented him from enjoying the drink. After a moment of silence, he finally spoke.
I read your message, Majesty. You wish to keep our friendship confined to letters.
You knew it was me. All I had mentioned previously was my certainty that Rose was not the author of the letters. How did he discern my identity? Prince Henry gave an awkward smile and waved his hand dismissively.
Don't be alarmed. You haven't made a mistake.
Then, how?
Both Miss Rose and her maid were privy to the contents of the early letters, but not the later ones. So I deduced it. It turns out that a lady-in-waiting named Viscountess Verdi had transferred from your service to Lady Rose's.
His explanation brought clarity, yet I was still taken aback, still not certain that I truly believed this was how he knew he had been conversing with me. Rumours often painted Prince Henry as a womanizer, a cruel man, and one who kept unsavoury company. However, they never alluded to his exceptional intelligence, which became evident in this revelation. A small smile crept onto my face, acknowledging this newfound respect for his acumen. Despite the brief moment of lightness, Prince Henry's expression remained sombre, prompting me to wonder about the source of his distress. He didn't seem disappointed that I was the one behind the letters, although initially I had hoped our correspondence would remain a secret, to spare us both any potential embarrassment. Why, then, did he look so troubled? Are you all right? You don't seem very happy. He sighed deeply, his gaze fixed upon me with an intensity that spoke volumes.
Majesty, our correspondence, albeit covert, has been a source of solace for me in a world where genuine connections are rare. I fear that transitioning our friendship to mere letters might distance us further.
His confession struck a chord within me. In the court politics where every word and gesture was scrutinized, true connections were indeed rare. Henry, for all his reputation and bravado, seemed to yearn for a semblance of authenticity in his interactions, something that our letters had inadvertently provided. I understand your concern, Prince, but you must also understand the position I am in. As Queen, my actions are not just my own. They reflect upon the entire empire. Our correspondence, though harmless, could be misconstrued, fueling rumours and jeopardizing not just our reputations, but the stability of our respective realms. He nodded slowly, the understanding evident in his eyes.
I respect your decision, Majesty. Know that my intentions were honourable. I merely sought a connection that transcended the superficialities of our positions. And yet, how can I be happy? I imagined us well, it doesn't matter, seeing as you want nothing to do with me.
Henry's words were laden with a profound sense of disappointment, his expression revealing the depth of his feelings. I paused, taken aback by his frankness. Was I truly being as cold as he suggested? As Aldrich had suggested? His forlorn demeanour made me hesitate to dismiss his feelings outright. In a swift motion, he downed his glass of champagne, as if trying to wash away his sorrows. His next statements were laced with truth wrought from the inhibition of drink.
I don't have many friends to share my thoughts with.
He placed his empty glass on a nearby marble pedestal.
I know it might seem unexpected. Am I popular? Certainly. I have many friends, always people around me. You might think I am never lonely.
I looked at him quizzically, struggling to reconcile this vulnerable side of him with the public persona he often displayed.
But that's only what is seen from the outside. In truth, I am very lonely. It's not that I dislike my friends. I have many good ones. However, as the Prince of the West, I can't truly share my thoughts. I must always be wary of others' perceptions.
His admission struck a chord in me. His words echoed my own sentiments, the same thoughts I had often confided in Majesty. It was as if the universe had conspired to deliver my innermost feelings to Henry.
It's not about the people around me, but my own position that makes it difficult.
As I listened, I realized that Prince Henry, too, was trapped in a role, forced to project an image that didn't always align with his true self. I had always perceived him as someone who acted without concern for others' opinions, but that, too, was merely a facade.
I cherished our conversations. They weren't long, but they were genuine. To talk to someone who didn't see me just as Prince Henry or Crown Prince was refreshing. Our letters were light-hearted, but to me, they were a rare source of joy.
His words resonated deeply with me. Here, in the midst of the grandeur of the banquet, we stood, two individuals bound by the constraints of our titles, yearning for a connection that transcended the roles we were obligated to play. I chose my words with care. Prince Henry, your sentiments mirror my own. It is a rare thing in our positions to find someone with whom we can share our true selves. Our letters have been a solace, a brief escape from the constant scrutiny and expectations of our stations. He looked at me, a flicker of hope lighting his eyes.
Then you understand. The loneliness, the longing for a true connection.
Yes, I do. And while I understand your disappointment, my decision to keep our friendship confined to letters is not a dismissal of its value. It is a necessary precaution, a way to protect not only our reputations, but also the fragile balance we must maintain in our respective roles. Prince Henry nodded slowly, absorbing my words.
I respect your decision, Majesty. And though it saddens me, I cherish the bond we have formed, even if it must remain hidden within the pages of our letters.
In Prince Henry, I found not only a confidant, but also a reflection of my own struggles and desires, a reminder that beneath the crowns and titles, we were both simply seeking a semblance of authenticity in a world that often demanded otherwise. In the midst of the swirling music and the clinking of glasses, Prince Henry's words resonated with a truth that mirrored my own experiences. I too had been marked as a princess from an early age, and it had been a long time since I felt I could truly open up to someone. It wasn't for a lack of good people around me, but rather because a good person, and a person I can reveal my innermost thoughts to, were distinctly different.
I've looked forward to those letters, but you seemed reluctant and inconvenienced.
As he spoke, I saw his eyes glisten, betraying a depth of vulnerability. Confronted with his gaze, a wave of guilt washed over me. I sympathized with his feelings, and his words filled me with a sense of regret. We had the same thoughts, but came to different conclusions. He looked at me, and in the chandelier's light his violet eyes shimmered like jewels, conveying a mixture of sadness and perhaps a hint of resentment. I stood at a crossroads. I could choose to be his friend, or end our connection here. I understand what you feel, Prince Henry.
But you still only want to exchange letters.
I enjoyed them.
Outside of letters, it will be even more enjoyable.
His statement came with a boyish grin that I feared reading too much into. But just as my mind strayed to darker thoughts, his next words put me off guard.
You could tell me that Aldrich's a son of a bitch.
I choked in surprise, drawing the attention of the nearby guests. Prince Henry quickly lowered his voice and whispered,
Aldrich is a son of a bitch.
Such bluntness from a prince. Prince Henry's eyebrows raised in amusement, a mischievous grin playing on his lips.
There is nothing more amusing than watching someone suppress a laugh. Just laugh if you want to.
I remained silent, my mind reeling from his candor, and my cheeks stinging from restraining my grin.
If you don't laugh, your heart will ache.
Ache? Did he speak from personal experience? His smile then faded, his voice growing more sombre. For a moment he stared at the floor, deep in thought. Finally, he returned his gaze to mine.
Then can you do something for me? I'll keep it a secret that you, my queen, are my secret correspondent, and I'll also keep it a secret that we are friends.
Are we friends?
Don't you know that we are friends, Your Majesty?
Then he made his proposal.
If we meet by chance, please don't shun me. And if the two of us happen to be alone, don't avoid me.
His voice was light, his smile playful, yet his eyes conveyed a serious plea. It sounded almost like a jest, but I knew it was anything but. As he gazed at me with those earnest, hopeful eyes, I felt an odd sensation. A gentle, yet poignant tug at my heart. It was a man who, beneath the facade of royalty and the burden of expectations, yearned for a connection as genuine and as human as any. In that moment, I realized the rarity of what we shared, a bond formed not by titles or duties, but by a mutual understanding of the loneliness that often accompanied our roles. With a newfound resolve, I considered his request, to acknowledge our friendship in the subtle, unspoken ways that our positions allowed. It was a small concession, but one that held the promise of... I didn't dare think of what a relationship between the prince and I promised.
They must be talking about me.
Rosa's thoughts were fraught with anxiety as she stared at the doorway leading to the royal banquet. Although Aldrich's presence should have ensured the event ran smoothly, her apprehension lingered. Her greatest concern was Prince Henry. What if he chose to speak out of turn or share something he shouldn't? The Queen, she felt, was unlikely to engage in rumour-mongering, but she couldn't be as confident about Prince Henry. With a sigh, Rose bit her lip, her mind racing with possibilities. Baron Lance's voice broke into her troubled thoughts.
You look pale today. Are you feeling well?
In truth, I am not.
His smile was warm and teasing.
You're very honest.
Rose offered a small smile in return. After Aldrich, Baron Lant was the person she held in highest regard within the palace. He had shown no prejudice towards her, and she was grateful for his defense when rumors about her and Prince Henry had circulated. It was hard not to feel a fondness for the older man.
Rest assured, no matter how unruly Prince Henry is, he has no choice but to yield to our king. Though the Celestial Isles has been growing in power, it cannot eclipse Elisaria, certainly not in this lifetime.
Rose took comfort in his words.
I suppose.
Miss Rose, have no fear. I will do whatever I can to protect my lady's honor. So go enjoy the last day of the celebrations.
Rose's spirits lifted at his assurance, and she found herself smiling more genuinely. Gradually, those who did not judge her harshly gathered around, some out of genuine affection, and others, perhaps, seeking favour. Before long she was encircled by a small crowd of nobles, each vying for her attention. She revelled in their admiration, basking in the warmth of their regard. The contrast between your silver hair and your dark eyes is so enviable. Rosa's eyes sparkled with a mix of pride and gratitude. The wine, a vintage far older than she, warmed her from within, and the praises showered upon her felt like soothing balm to her earlier anxieties. For a moment, she allowed herself to forget the uncertainties that plagued her mind, and simply enjoy the adulation of those around her. In that moment, surrounded by admirers and buoyed by their compliments, Rose felt a sense of belonging and acceptance that had often eluded her within the walls of the palace, never mind in her previous life. It was a rare and cherished moment, a brief respite from the complexities and intrigues that typically colored her days.
As she sipped her wine, she resolved to make the most of the evening, to immerse herself in the joy and celebration that marked the end of the winter solstice festivities. After all, despite the challenges she faced, moments like these were a reminder of the beauty and pleasure that life at court could offer. Around her, the compliments from jockeying nobles continued to swirl.
My lady, if I dare say, you give the feeling of purity, like a lily of the valley. Duchess Betha might need to defend her current reputation.
They are all talking about me.
Rose thought to herself, while a pleasant sense of euphoria washed over her. She had always known that beauty could be both a gift and a curse. Only through trials and tribulations had she learned to wield her beauty like a weapon, yet it was a double-edged sword that placed her in constant peril. But here, in this moment, she felt different. Surrounded by praise and adoration, with the protection of the most powerful man in the empire, she felt untouchable, invincible.
But didn't you say you were going to the royal banquet? Isn't it taking place at this moment? Why are you here?
Rose turned to face the speaker, a noblewoman of no particular distinction or influence, but her sharp tone had broken the harmonious atmosphere. This was the first time she had mingled in their circle. The other nobles fell silent at the question, their curiosity evident despite their reticence to speak. Rose faltered momentarily before quickly composing herself and concocting a plausible response.
It's because I wanted to be here. I chose to be here.
Oh, truly, Miss Rose?
The noblewoman persisted, a note of surprise or disbelief in her voice.
Yes, truly. Important foreign guests usually go to the banquet. Rather than attending, I thought it would be better to leave a seat for someone who would benefit our country.
The nobles around her expressed their delight at her response, only encouraging her.
So smart for a concubine. Indeed, many of the previous concubines only spent money and idled away, showing no interest in international affairs at all. Miss Rose is certainly different from them.
Rose felt a surge of pride at their words. Despite the occasional challenges and the scrutiny she faced, moments like these reaffirmed her belief in her own worth and her place within the intricate social fabric of the court. She was more than just a pretty face, more than just the king's concubine. She was a woman of substance, one who understood the nuances of court life and the importance of playing her role with grace and intelligence. Or so she thought. As the evening progressed, Rose continued to bask in the glow of the nobles' admiration. Their words of praise were like a soothing balm, healing the wounds inflicted by the gossip and rumors that often swirled around her. In their company, she found a sense of acceptance and belonging that had often eluded her in the more formal settings of the court. This was her realm, her domain, where she could shine brightly, unfettered by the constraints and expectations that came with her position as the king's concubine. For now, at least, she was the undisputed star of the evening, the butterfly that had captured the attention of all who surrounded her. Rose smiled shyly, her eyes lowered modestly as she basked in the admiration that flowed from the nobles around her. Their praise was intoxicating, lifting her spirits higher than any wine could. She murmured softly, almost to herself, hinting at her role beyond just beauty and charm.
I should help His Majesty.
No, no, the nearby group of young men chorused. Stay for another drink. At the mention of another drink, a flurry of noblemen eagerly offered her a selection of wine glasses. Rose, with a delicate hand, chose a flute filled with light purple liquor. The young man who had profited beamed with pride at her choice. However, her moment of triumph was short-lived.
Over the young man's shoulder, Rose caught a glimpse of someone, a figure who should not have been there. In her shock, the flute slipped from her grasp and shattered on the floor with a sharp, echoing crash. "Miss Rose, are you all right?" "What happened?" Rose, still reeling from the sight, jerked her head around, searching for the unexpected visitor, but the figure had vanished. Silently, Rose panicked.
Am I seeing things? It couldn't be. Could it?
Placing a hand on her corset, she tried to steady her racing heart. Perhaps it was just the alcohol playing tricks on her mind. As servants hurried to clean up the broken glass, and spilled liquor, Rose's gaze kept darting back to where she had seen the man, her expression one of confusion and apprehension. Baron Lant, noticing her unusual behavior, began to turn in the direction of her gaze.
"What's wrong, Miss Rose?"
Quickly, Rose reached out and caught the hem of his robe, halting his movement.
Baron Lant, I have a question.
Baron Lant looked at her, curiosity in his eyes. Her voice was low and urgent.
For the winter solstice celebrations, if a nobleman doesn't come on the first day, can they come on the last?
Of course. Some may not be able to attend the festivities immediately due to various reasons.
Rose's voice dropped to a whisper.
Do royal aristocrats come to the winter solstice celebrations? Those with small estates? Do you not help choose the guests?
Yes, I assist in the selection, and indeed nobility, even from small estates, can be invited.
Despite Baron Lant's confirmation, Rose pressed on, her curiosity evident. He continued to explain, his tone reflecting the inclusive nature of the Empire's approach to its nobility.
And if they haven't attended for years?
Even if they haven't attended for a long time, we still extend invitations. It's our way of ensuring that they don't feel completely forgotten or isolated from court life.
Rose nodded, processing this information. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of speculation and concern. The unexpected sighting had unsettled her, and Baron Lant's answers only added to her anxiety. As the nobles around her resumed their conversations and the festivities continued, Rose's mind remained preoccupied with the enigmatic figure. In the midst of the celebration, she stood, a solitary figure grappling with questions that demanded answers, her thoughts far removed from the laughter and light-hearted banter that surrounded her. Rose's lips started to quiver, and Baron Lant's expression darkened with concern.
Miss Rose, what's happened?
Rose shook her head, her mind racing with thoughts of Viscount Rothescue, the lord of the estate where she had once been a slave. He knew her face, and the potential danger of his presence was overwhelming. She pushed her glass towards Baron Lant, her voice shaky.
I think it's best I go inside. I think I'm drunk.
She attempted to weave her way out of the crowd, her steps unsteady. A drunken mistake might be excused, but if she was seen interacting with Viscount Rothescue, the consequences could be dire. As she made her way out, a loud, mocking voice rang out behind her. "Do my eyes deceive me?" Gooseflesh erupted on Rose's neck, and her face paled. Her eyes darkened with fear, the weight of her past threatening to crash down upon her. Baron Lant, sensing her distress, hastened to her side. He called out to her, his voice laced with anxiety.
"Miss Rose!"
But before she could respond, the mocking voice grew closer, sneering, slithering. "Miss Rose,
Each word, each syllable dripped with disdain. "What is this now? Have you changed your identity?" The room fell deathly silent at the intrusion, all eyes turning toward the source of the voice. The implications of the statement hung heavy in the air. "The world must be improving beyond any measure I thought possible. A runaway slave treated like a lady now? The voice echoed, loud enough for everyone to hear. Rose stood frozen, unable to turn around, caught in the spotlight of scandal and accusation. The past she had tried so hard to leave behind was suddenly thrust into the present, threatening to unravel the new life she had painstakingly built. Baron Lance stepped protectively closer to Rose, his gaze shifting between her and the source of the voice.
"Enough! This is neither the time nor the place for such accusations."
The room remained silent, the tension palpable. Rose could feel a trickle of cold sweat run across her skin. Her worst nightmare was coming true.
Prince Henry and I found ourselves in a secluded corner, away from the prying eyes and ears of the festivities. The air was thick with intrigue, and the unspoken words that danced between us. Henry inquired, his voice low and tinged with a curiosity that seemed to probe deeper than the words themselves.
"You stopped looking for your correspondent. It seemed you two had quite a bond."
I paused, my hand idly tracing the edge of my goblet. Yes, if they haven't revealed themselves by now, then they never will. They threw the bait into the river to see if the fish would bite. Henry leaned closer, his eyes searching mine.
"But you wanted it badly enough to make it known. I didn't think you were one to let what you desired go."
I met his gaze, finding in his eyes a mixture of excitement and something else, something indefinable. I don't want to make the person feel uncomfortable because of me. I hope there will be a sign I'm wrong in my assumptions. Just then, a voice sounded in the cavernous room.
"Your Majesty! King Aldrich!"
The captain of the guard's voice resonated through the hall with a sense of urgency that couldn't be ignored. I watched as Aldrich, his attention finally diverted from Prince Henry, turned to face the knight. The captain's eyes were steady, his expression gravely serious.
"You need to come to the Grand Hall."
His announcement carried across the room to the ears of the gathered guests. A murmur of curiosity and concern rippled through the assembly, each pair of eyes turning towards the captain. Aldrich rose, his brow furrowed in concern. His voice carried a mixture of authority and worry.
"What is it? A matter that requires your immediate attention, Your Majesty."
The captain maintained his formal posture.
"I apologize for the interruption, but it couldn't be delayed."
Aldrich nodded, a sense of regal duty overtaking his features. He turned to me briefly, his eyes meeting mine in a silent exchange of understanding, before he strode out of the room, followed closely by the captain. The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably, with whispers and speculative glances exchanged among the guests. I remained where I was, trying to mask my own curiosity and concern with a composed exterior. Prince Henry glanced at me, his eyes reflecting a mixture of interest and concern. Catching his gaze, I offered him a reassuring smile, though my mind was racing with the possibilities about the nature of the urgent message.
"Troubles in the kingdom, perhaps?"
He inquired softly, his voice low enough to not be overheard by the others. "I'm not certain." I made sure to keep my voice equally hushed. But the captain's expression was most grave. It must be a matter of some importance. Henry nodded thoughtfully, his gaze lingering on the doorway through which Aldrich and the captain had departed.
"In times like these, a kingdom needs strong leadership.
Aldrich has always been a capable ruler, even in the face of unexpected challenges. Our conversation was interrupted as Grand Duke Bjorn, who had been mostly silent throughout the evening, but now finally spoke up, his voice carrying a hint of intrigue.
Perhaps it's a matter of security, or maybe something more arcane. These are unpredictable times, after all.
I turned to face the man, intrigued by his comment. Do you suspect it could be something related to magic, Grand Duke? He shrugged, a cryptic smile playing on his lips.
I wouldn't presume to speculate without more information. But in my experience, when a king is summoned so urgently, it's rarely a trivial matter.
A collective sense of curiosity and urgency filled the room. I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. What awaited Aldrich? What news could be so important that it required immediate attention? I replayed the moment in my mind. The captain had glanced uneasily at the guests milling about the throne room when he had made his announcement, his reluctance to speak openly evident. Sensing the knight's discomfort, Aldrich had gestured for him to step outside for a more private conversation. The more I thought about it, the more questions swirled around in my mind. Should I follow them? But then I paused, reasoning that if my presence were necessary, the captain would have addressed me directly. This matter, whatever it was, likely didn't involve me. And if so, it couldn't be a matter that dire. At least I hoped. Resolving to stay, I mingled among the guests, keeping a bright smile on my face to reassure them, all the while keeping an eye on the door, half expecting the captain or Aldrich to return with news. Eventually, duty called me away from the throne room and into the grand banquet hall, where I was to check on the other guests and oversee the evening's preparations, including the fireworks display. I also made a promise to meet with Laura, I reminded myself, to ensure that she enjoys this year's festivities. It's the least I can do after Aldrich locked her. After what he made her suffer. Upon entering the grand banquet hall, I was taken aback by the lively atmosphere. Did something happen? The energy was uncharacteristic for the final days of a lengthy celebration, when fatigue usually set in. Instead, the hall buzzed with animated conversations and laughter. As I observed the scene, Laura approached me, her eyes alight with excitement. Your Majesty, did you hear? No, what's happened? I've been in the throne room where the captain summoned the king. Laura knew better than to interrupt a royal, but her words tumbled out in a rush nonetheless. The rumor about Rose. My response was a grimace, an involuntary reaction to the name. But Laura, undeterred by my discomfort, pressed on. Do you remember the rumor that she was a runaway slave? Yes, but are we not allowed to speak of it? I reminded her, recalling Aldrich's stern warning about the consequences of such gossip. I was about to caution her, but Laura's voice rang out, too loud for my comfort. She really is an escaped slave. Viscount Rothescue arrived at the party for the first time, and he recognized Rose. I hardly trusted my ears, and when I spoke again, my voice was unsteady. The name echoed in my mind, a harbinger of turmoil. Viscount Rothescue. She was his slave. Then she ran away. Are you certain? Laura, this isn't a rumor to be trifled with. She nodded vigorously. Yes, my lady, it is most certainly true. If the king was here, he would have stopped him. Not only that, the Viscount had only been in the capital for a few hours. He didn't know about the rumors about Rose, or the order not to talk about her. That's why he openly announced that Rose was a slave in front of everyone you see here. I felt a wave of vindication, but tried my utmost not to show it. I knew Laura could see it in my face, but she graciously chose to overlook it, instead continuing with her tale, her voice dropping to a scornful whisper. Rose denied it, of course, but everyone believed Rothescue. The concubine looked mortified. I could imagine the scene, the shock, the whispers spreading like wildfire. Laura snorted derisively. All the nobles who came up to Rose must be like fools now. And where is Rose and the Viscount now? When Rose fainted, Baron Lant carried her to her bedroom. Then the captain of the Royal Guard came and took Viscount Rothescue. The hall, with its gilded columns and tapestries, suddenly felt like a stage for a play of power and secrets. I thought of Rose, her position in the court, and how this revelation could shatter the delicate balance of influence. This will cause a stir in the court. Laura nodded, her expression grave. Indeed it will. The repercussions of this, it could change everything. So that was why the captain had been so urgently seeking Aldrich. Within me, an unexplained emotion surged, a tumultuous blend of feelings difficult to name. Was it vindication? Perhaps. When Aldrich had accused me of spreading false rumors about Rose being a runaway slave, I had been consumed with a mix of resentment and sorrow. Now, knowing the truth, there was a sense of satisfaction, a feeling that the scales of justice had in some way tipped in my favor. But this feeling was not without its complexities. In a small, almost imperceptible corner of my heart, there was a lack of thrill, a discomfort that I couldn't quite place. Was this unease that shadowed my satisfaction? I found no answer. The internal conflict too intricate to unravel in the midst of the court's chaos. I decided to let it lie, unresolved for the moment. My thoughts turned to Aldrich and Rose. Had Aldrich not known that Rose was a runaway slave when he first rescued her? And even if he had known, would it have changed anything? I wondered about this, considering Aldrich's character. He had brought her to court, moved her by pitiful circumstances and driven by a powerful desire to protect her. Whether he had fallen in love with her, or lust at that first meeting or later, seemed irrelevant now. To Aldrich, Rose's status, whether as a commoner or a fugitive slave, wouldn't alter his feelings. He would continue to love her, striving to shield her from ridicule and harm. Yet the implications of this revelation were far-reaching. The court was a labyrinth where a secret revealed could become a weapon wielded by friends and foes alike. What would happen now? Would Aldrich defend Rose against the accusations? Against the scorn of the court? Or would the revelation of her past force a change in their relationship? A shift in affection? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wanted no part in this unfolding drama. This was a matter for Aldrich and Rose to resolve, a storm they had to weather. My role, if there was one, was to observe and stay silent. As the court buzzed with whispers and speculation, I retreated into my own thoughts, watching the play of emotions and strategies unfold. And so, with a heavy heart and a mind full of unanswered questions, I resolved to step back from the fray, to watch and wait. But even as I did so, I grimaced against a pain in my heart. Despite everything he had put me through, I felt for Aldrich. I wanted to comfort him, to go to him in his time of need. And I hated myself for that.